Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sanghang Namasami. So I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. I'm glad everyone was able to come. So one of the things, we hear a lot about, in Buddhism, in Dhamma, is about this term refuge and having a refuge. So we'll have the three refuges: the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and we're always hearing about going to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha for refuge. And a lot of our ceremonies, when we have ceremonies, we'll have this thing we chant, and it'll be in Pali, and we'll go over it a few times, three times. I go to refuge the Buddha, go to refuge the Dhamma, I go to refuge the Sangha, and we'll say for a second time, I go to refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and then a third time. So this is, something which is very uh, a big part of practice and something to develop. But also, we also hear about this going to refuge in yourself, and there's this very famous saying from the Buddha in the Dhammapada about making the self the refuge of self. What other refuge could there be? And there's different ways we go about that, and sometimes we hear it also, and it's like, well, that's easy to say. What does that mean? And so actually, there is in the suttas, there is a place where the Buddha taught about this, about how to develop oneself as a refuge. We can use it as a refuge for ourselves and a refuge for other people. So it's in the Anguttara Nikaya, in the chapter of the tens. So that means it's going to be a long list. It's going to be a 10 point list. And it's called the Nāthakarana Dhammas. And the first time I ever heard this list was when I was a junior monk. It was in a Dhamma talk by Lumpur Banjong that he gave at Wapapong. So there's a couple times a year when there are these like ngans. It's called a ngan. So it's like a kind of a retreat at Wat Nong Papong. So there's one in January, which which is just finishing yesterday, I think, and just in Wapapong for the remembrance of Ajahn Chah, for to remember when he died, when he did his parinibbana. And so it's a week-long um, practice period, practice ceremony, and you can get 10,000 lay people going, 1,000 monks, and it's a looser schedule, but there still is scheduled activities throughout the days. A lot of people will come and stay in the forest, so people will set up little pop tents or little what's called a glot, which is like uh, umbrella with a mosquito net hanging from it, and hang it from a cord between two trees, and then you sleep under that on a plastic mat. And they'll even have hay brought in, so you can put some hay underneath. And it actually makes a big difference. It really does help with the insulation because it is the cold season right now in Thailand. And what there'll be is in the morning, afternoon, and in the evening, there'll be these programs going on, and there'll be different Dhamma talks throughout the day. And some of the Dhamma talks, it's everyone together, the monks and the lay people in the main sala, the main meditation hall. But other times they'll be split up. So there'll be a Dhamma talk for the lay people in the main meditation hall, but in the boat or the Uposatha hall, which is the building that monks do their ceremonies in, such as chanting our Patimokkha or doing ordinations. It's a special building in the monastery. And so they'll have a talk for the monks there. Um, but also there's another one in September, and it's in the middle of the Rains retreat, and Lumpur Liam puts it on. And this one's the focus is just for monks. So all the monks he's ordained, because he acts as the upajjhaya, or the preceptor for many, many different monasteries. So there's lots of monks who have been ordained by Luang Por Liam, including myself, and they'll all gather at Wat Pah Pong for this week, and it'll be a much more intense like meditation retreat than that. And so there'll be Dhamma talks many times throughout the day. And at one of these retreats, I can't remember which one, Luang Por Banjong gave this talk on the Nāthakarana Dhammas. I think I had maybe just ordained as a monk or been a monk for maybe 1 year and heard this talk. And of course, at that time, I didn't speak any Thai at all. I just knew just a few words of Thai, the very, very minimum amount of Thai. But it was okay because usually for these retreats for the Western monks, they'll usually one or two monks, which is kind of they volunteer, they're kind of assigned to translate all the Dhamma talks for us. And so they really it's so great when you're a junior monk that it's these monks have made this sacrifice to really put this effort into translating all the talks because these talks are much longer than the talks I give. You're looking at 45 minutes, hour easy, and they do a great job of it. And so this one was translated by a senior monk, Ajahn Siripanyo, and uh, and he's a very skillful speaker. He's very eloquent in the way he talks, and he can really be good at conveying the humor in some of these Dhamma talks. So this talk was by Luang Por Banjong, who gives really great talks, very humorous talks. They're really funny, and he has a lot of disciples. He has hundreds and hundreds of monks have ordained with him. He has, at least a couple of years ago, I heard he had over 50 branch monasteries, and a lot of them are in this one area of southern Ubon province, right near the Cambodian border. So, anyways, the first time I heard this talk was by him, and I remember hearing it, and I just thought it was one of the most phenomenal talks I had heard. I really loved it. I thought it was done really, really well. And so he talked about these Nāthakarana Dhammas, or these 10 qualities that we can develop to make ourselves a refuge for ourselves, but also a refuge for people around us. So, that we're someone that we can depend on. We're someone that has that, or other people around us can depend on, when there's any type of troubles, or we're hitting problems, or we just, don't know where to go, that we can really depend on ourselves. And so, again, there's 10 factors to it. And the first one is that we have sila, or that we're virtuous. So when we really have this really like strong, developed morality, our sila, our precepts, we can really depend on ourselves and see that we're not going to be creating all the problems and all the dukkha that come from not having sila. And the base for it for lay people is the five precepts. For the monks, it's the 227. But having that basis, but we want to take it higher than that. So when we talk about the first precept about not killing, we can take it deeper than just not killing. We can take it not harming, not hitting, not kicking, and for speech, instead of just not lying, as we were talking about last week, and be avoiding frivolous speech, malicious speech, harsh speech, really working on bringing these up. And we can really, really rely on ourselves. And also, other people can rely on us. We feel safe for other people because they know they can trust us. They know we're not going to harm them. We're not going to steal from them. We're not going to lie to them. We're not going to get intoxicated and break all the other precepts. There's so having this, we can other people rely on us, and we can become a refuge for them as well. It's when the Buddha talks about the five precepts. One of the times he actually says, keeping these five precepts is a gift. We're giving other people the gift of fearlessness around us because they don't have to worry. They don't have to worry that we're going to do something bad. We're going to say something bad. They don't have to worry that we're going to betray them or anything. So when we develop this quality uh, of sila, of morality, of virtue, this is the first factor in helping us become a refuge. And the second one is to have a lot of learning. And this is learning here in regards to the Dhamma. in regards to practice, in regards to ourselves, our own minds. So when we have that, a lot of times um, we can rely on ourselves to help come up with these answers, to help get over these problems. Doesn't mean, we'll fix it every time. Everyone, sometimes needs to go and talk to someone or ask someone, but a lot of times it's really developing that within ourselves. So there was this kind of famous uh, uh, a thing which happened in the time of the of Luang Por Chah, and it gets quoted a lot, is some of the Westerners went to Luang Por Chah and asked him, like, if you could recommend just one book that we could have that could really be the book to keep with us, what would that be? And the Luang Por Chah pointed at his heart and said, and so they interpreted this as, you can read your own heart, which again is very good, very great Dhamma teaching. But I also take this to be another teaching which we can get from this as well too, because a lot of people in that asking for that one book, again, I think this is very much coming from very like Abrahamic religions, wanting that Bible, that one book, which is the refuge. When we have problems, we can go to that book. And I think, pointing at yourself is that through your own learning, through, the teachings we've listened to, the teachings we've read, and the stuff we've learned through our own experience, from trying these out, from doing that, we create that refuge within ourselves. So we can think, oh, this problem has come up for me. Okay, let's remember what I've learned about this. Let's remember the teachings I've had about that. And then, of course, for other people too, when they have some kind of problem or something comes up for them, we can be a refuge for them as well. So that's the second factor. And the third factor is having good friends or having kalyana mitta. So I know this is something I've talked about a lot, and the Buddha really pushed the importance of having good friends. So, being someone who, you bring these people who are good influences into your life and are going to help bring you up. And, again, this is going to help us really be a refuge for ourselves. We're not going to have, negative factors pulling us down in life. But again, just the way life is, we can't just cold cut out everyone who doesn't just bring us up. But it's still having that group of people, having those Kalyana Mitta, those Dhamma friends, those spiritual friends, around, and having a good group of them, will make us more dependable for ourselves and for people around us. And so when the Buddha was teaching this list, he was talking to monks at the time. So he said it's good to have skill and be skillful and diligent at doing all the different chores and duties that a monk has. So for example, at Wat Pah Nanachat, this is a big part of our training. And your big part of the training as the junior monk is you have to learn how to do all these different skills so that you do have this refuge. You can depend on yourself. So for us, it's stuff like we have to learn how to sew our robes, dye our robes. You have to learn how to make brooms. You have to learn how to make all your requisites, repair your requisites. You have to learn how to take care of other monks, take care of sick monks, take care of senior monks. You do all the different duties within the monastery. So the guest monk, the cloth monk, all those, there's many different positions within the monastery. And, we all have to, as part of the training at Wat Pah Nanachat, at least when I was there, we had to learn all of those. And so at the end of our training period, we really know how to kind of do everything in the monastery. We know our vinaya, we know all these things. So if you're anywhere around and something happens, like you rip your robe, you know how to sew it up and fix it, or you need a new robe, or you're somewhere and there's brooms. So you can really like depend on yourself. You have this skill set where, you can do a lot of things yourself. And also, when other people need something, they can come to you and be like, oh, yeah, you're from Wat Pah Nanachat. Can you show me how to sew some robes? Or and so, but even when we're not a monk, we can take this in our daily life. So actually, having some skill sets for just kind of the things around in our daily lives. So, for example, knowing how to cook for yourself, or knowing how to wash clothes, or knowing how to do something like simple home repairs. It can really like free yourself up. So if like the cupboard falls off, you know how to use a screwdriver and put it back on, and so you don't necessarily have to call someone. And again, you don't have to learn all these skills, but having these skills does make you able to depend on yourself more and for other people to depend on you. But sometimes, from just how you grew up or where you lived or something, it's not maybe we didn't necessarily learn them. So like I didn't we in school we had to learn how to do all these things. We had to learn how to do cooking, home ec, uh, shops, graphic arts. All the guys did, all the guys, all the girls, we all had to learn all of it in school. But it wasn't that much. So like I didn't know much about tools when I came to the monastery. When I was when I was a novice, we had this senior Australian monk and he could see that I was pretty clueless about this. So he actually took me to the workshop and set out all the different tools and explained which each one was and how to use it and stuff. But he used the Australian names for them, which are different than ours, like stuff like spanner and stuff like that. So so he uh yeah, so he had done that for me. But and just again, so you can learn these skills, so you can depend on yourself. And so that was the other next one is being easy to correct. So again, this one sounds kind of weird, but it's important for us when we're developing ourselves or when we're trying to practice Dhamma or even in any worldly thing, that we're someone that is easy to be corrected. And like in the monastery, this is very important, is being easy. We use the word admonish, but admonish, like I always say, it sounds a lot harsher than it is. It sounds like a teacher scolding the students when it's really more like people just pointing out what's done wrong. Because, when we're like that and we can accept criticisms from other people, we can accept correction from other people, we have that ability to grow. We have that ability to have those things, those faults, those weak points that we have, which we don't see ourselves, that other people can point out to us and we're able to grow. So having that ability to grow, having that ability to take what other people say and build on it again makes us so we're much more dependable. We're much more reliant on ourselves, and other people can rely on us. The Buddha had said, when you hit that point when you're unadmonishable, like no one will correct you. Either you're just too stubborn, or you talk back, or you just don't listen. Then he said that's death in the holy life for the monks, because you're going to stop growing because there's a lot of those things we just can't see ourselves. And then the sixth factor is loving Dhamma and having like this love of Dhamma. And so this is again for building our spiritual practice and our Dhamma practice is to actually enjoy Dhamma, enjoy listening to it, enjoy practicing it, enjoy just enjoying the whole aspect of Dhamma. And again, when you have that, it's going to make all of the practice easier because you're doing something you enjoy, even though it's maybe something difficult, but it's just, it's not some kind of like side hobby you have to force yourself into it. Something you really like. So when Lumpur Smedo used to come and visit Wat Pah Nanachat, um, sometimes there'd be like more organized question and answers with him. But a lot of times what he'd do in the evening for all the monks is he'd just make himself available. He we have a special like kuti or special hut to dwelling in the monastery for him. And it actually has this like receiving room on it for specifically for this when these like groups of monks go to visit him. So in the evenings, he'd make himself available. And usually, like the most of the monks would go over and we'd just sit there and chat with him, ask him questions. He'd tell stories, all that very, very laid back, but it's always about Dhamma. And then eventually, what would have to do when he was getting older, because, he's in his 90s now. But building up to that, usually one of the senior monks would have to kind of like cut it short, be like, okay, yeah, Lumpur needs to rest now because, he loved talking about Dhamma. And he'd always say, oh, this is my favorite subject. And so having that love of Dhamma, really makes you a refuge for yourself. It becomes something easy to go to, easy to bring up in mind, easier to practice. So the sixth factor is having that love of Dhamma. And the seventh factor is roused energy. So bringing up that energy or that effort or that diligence to really get rid of unwholesome qualities. So it's one thing just to love the Dhamma and and have all those other skills, but actually being able to rouse that energy and bring up that energy to get rid of our unwholesome states, our unwholesome qualities, our unwholesome states which arise in our mind. Because, yeah, again, talk is cheap, right? So it's easy to think it. It's good. I mean, the other things, just loving it, good, but really to become a refuge for ourselves so we can depend on ourselves, we have to be able to rouse that energy and learn how to rouse that energy to get rid of these unwholesome mind states which come up. And the eighth quality is to practice contentment with our requisites. So again, this list was, when it was given more for monks. So, for monks, we have our four requisites. We have our robes, we have our alms food, we have our dwellings, and we have our medicine. And so when we ordained, the Buddha gave us like the very, very bare minimum. He said for where you could live. He said the only thing you're guaranteed is to have rag robes made out of like cast off cloth. Like, so at the time of the Buddha, monks would find cast off pieces of cloth and collect it. And sometimes it was quite what was considered quite lowly cloth at the time. So sometimes it was even the cloth that had been used to wrap corpses and stuff. And so you'll still see at a lot of the forest monasteries I've stayed at where we do funerals, there'll be this tradition of the villagers that the cloth that had wrapped the body, when they take that off, they'll actually hang it in a tree nearby somewhere and just leave it there so that if a monk wants to go and collect that to make robes. So the Buddha guaranteed that's our minimum for robes. And for food, he said whatever food you can get from your alms round. For dwelling, he said the root of a tree. So just the minimum we were guaranteed is just to sleep under a tree. And then for medicine, it's like medicine made out of fermented urine. So this was the bare minimum he guaranteed. So anything above that is bonus, right? So learning to practice contentment with that. And for lay people, again, in your life, it's learning to develop contentment. And again, this really creates that, you can depend on yourself when you're just content with what you've got. There's not that constant need, that constant wanting to get more, and again, it's okay to get more. It's okay. If your car breaks down, you can get a new car or something like that. But really just practicing contentment with whatever you have. If you have a lot, if you have little, whatever it is, just developing that sense of contentment with it. And the ninth quality is mindfulness. So just, having mindfulness, being someone when you have a lot of mindfulness, because so many of our things in our practice of Dhamma, really mindfulness is at the heart of them, because mindfulness is that ability to bring something up into the mind and then hold it in mind. So not only will that, is with meditation, but with things throughout the day, even remembering things. So the Venerable Nanda, he was the Buddha's attendant, and he was the foremost disciple in mindfulness. But a lot of that was because he could, remember all of the teachings, remember all of the texts. He could bring all this stuff up into mind. So with us, if we are someone who has mindfulness, we've got good mindfulness, we can really depend on ourselves, and other people will depend on us. And the 10th and final factor is that we're wise, having wisdom. And of course, this would be wisdom specifically in the terms of Dhamma, in, removing those things that create suffering, seeing them as what they are, and putting forth that wisdom to get rid of them. And so when you have these 10 qualities, you really have this, you can become a refuge, you can depend on yourselves. But again, with a lot of these things, it's not just that you either have them or you don't. You can work on developing them and work on developing to become a refuge for yourself. So it's not like, okay, I today I don't really feel like I love Dhamma or something like that. So I'm not a refuge, or I can't depend on myself. No, it's as you practice and you go on, these qualities are just going to naturally build. And like I was saying, a lot of these, like say with the training we have at Wat Pah Nanachat, even though it's not formulated and you're not told like, okay, we're really training you to become a refuge for yourself, but it's just it doesn't have to be said. It's just kind of a byproduct of that. And so with a lot of us, as we practice, as we keep going on and practicing and developing our practice, a lot of these qualities are going to develop on their own. If we'd like, we can, put specific energy into learning some of these or developing some of these qualities. But a lot of times too, they'll just develop as just a natural byproduct or a natural result or natural benefit of practicing Dhamma. And so I'd like to offer that to everyone as a bit of a reflection for this evening.